Last year, almost to the date, I arrived home from a spectacular pilgrimage to Israel. It is still hard to believe that I got to stroll on the shorelines of the Sea of Galilee, journey to Jerusalem, and march the ramparts of the old city. The pilgrimage allowed me the opportunity, alongside old and new friends, my parents and my uncle, to see firsthand the land that birthed the people who would become the first followers of the way. There were two moments that I still, a year later, can picture so very vividly in my mind's eye. I think it's because these two moments were when I felt true celestial peace. The first of these was the sunrise on the Sea of Galilee, where we stayed for several nights at the Nafganosar kibbutz. The day that we landed at the hotel, I realized that there was a pier at the far end of the property that jutted out over the shallows of the sea. And I instantly made the covenant with myself that the very first morning I was going to get up early and witness the sun rise over the Golan Heights in the east. I remember waking up that early morning in April quite briskly, excited to share in an experience that Peter, James, John, and Jesus had borne witness to in their own lives many times 2,000 years ago. I climbed down the rocks that surrounded the pier so that I could sit on this particularly comfortable-looking rock right at the edge of the water, where the water caressed and slapped up against the other rocks around me. I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if I can step out onto this water and not sink. Which I quickly realized, even in asking that question to myself, I revealed doubt. And so, there I sat, reflecting, praying, imagining, simply watching. The sun began to creep up over the mountains in the distance, and a beam of light reflected off the water, seemingly in a straight line directed right at me. I felt the presence of God. I felt the fear in my inadequacy and great joy in my belonging. There was nothing in that moment that could have separated me from being right in step with the Spirit. Birds chirped. Water splashed. A fisherman sailed his boat in the distance, hoping to catch fish before the day's heat overcame the brisk breeze of dawn. The scene was so incredibly empty. Yet in the very same respect, the world was full of life. And creation was at peace. Peace overcame me a second time while I was in Israel, but this instance was in Jerusalem at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. My Uncle John, my parents, Dan and Helen, and Dr. Joette Giovinco and her father got up early in the morning so that we could beat the crowds to see the inside of the tomb of Jesus. Well, this tomb is debated by scholars, but this particular one is the one that Helena, Constantine's mother, declared to be the tomb of Christ. It is a magnificent marble structure that has been laden with lanterns and other artifacts signifying its holiness. While we stood there waiting for the morning service at the tomb to finish, I found myself drawn to the tomb that sits about 20 to 30 feet behind the marble one. It is the Syriac chapel of Joseph of Arimathea, a first-century Jewish tomb that some scholars debate is the actual tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and thus the tomb that Christ was really laid in after his crucifixion. I walked into that empty chapel and immediately felt overcome with fear. I can't explain it. But to be fair, there's a bit of creepiness attached to an empty tomb at 6 a.m. in the morning. Amid my fear, I heard a repetitive voice in my head, "Do not be afraid." And instantly my mind raced to the Easter morning story of the Marys at the tomb, maybe this very tomb. Do not be afraid. It is the same message they heard from the angel that morning as they came to prepare Jesus' body. And I was there equally to see the place where he lay. Yet in this tomb's emptiness, I acknowledged fear. In the emptiness of the tomb, I knew both loneliness and serenity, fear and joy. Do not be afraid. I know what you are looking for. Recently, Dr. William P. Brown of Columbia Theological Seminary came out of his sabbatical to write an article about the life-giving emptiness of Easter this year. He was compelled himself to acknowledge the confusion that many of us Christians have felt in trying to figure out what in the world Easter means if we can't gather to celebrate and proclaim the risen Lord. Dr. Brown was drawn to the imagery of the emptiness of the tomb and made the biblical connection to the fact that maybe the churches being empty this year on Easter isn't sacrilegious or a testament to our death, but rather it is biblically sound in the testament to the resurrection. As the tomb was empty that first Easter morning, so are the churches this year. But my friends, rejoice and do not be afraid, because the empty tomb, the empty church, is a sign that Jesus is alive and walking among us this day. I leave you with this excerpt from Dr. Brown's article. Where then is he? According to John's Gospel, the resurrected Jesus made his first public appearance with his disciples in their social isolation, huddled in fear, a locked room. To be sure, their social isolation was for a different reason than ours, but no matter. Christ will surely find us this Easter wherever we have isolated ourselves. He's done it before. Peace be with you. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.